we've just gotten so used to like, get it done, get it done. Yep, add more on and I can get it done. And we acclimate this level, and it's just so relative depending on what phase of life you're in or what your goals are.
Our perception of our demands or what we encounter tend to be magnified.
Yes.
Right?
Here's where we're at. What are our options, right?
Rather than compromise on quality or just for the sake of releasing an episode every week, what Seema and I have decided to do is... Seema, welcome back. It's another episode, and we kind of have an announcement / informative episode, right?
We do.
What are we talking about today?
I think everybody who listens to this podcast, it's safe to say, has a really full plate. Not to say that other people don't, but just to really hone in and understand our listeners have full lives, right? And I think it's interesting because what we think of as a full plate isn't necessarily perceived as a full plate by us. So I'll give you an example. The other day, I have a friend of mine who is getting certified in human design. And I kind of just said like, oh, whenever you're done getting certified, I'd love for you to do my reading. And she said, oh, let's play around with it. Let's see what we can do. And she looked and she said, so what I'm seeing is that for you, most people think you're so competent that it probably makes you want to throw up. And I thought, I don't know that that's true. But the more I thought about it, I think we've just gotten so used to like, get it done, get it done. Yep, add more on and I can get it done. And we acclimate, right, to this level. And it's just so relative depending on what phase of life you're in or what your goals are, and what you're used to, how you're used to living too.
It is relative, but I think the more predominant thought that I have about the relativity is that our perception of our demands or what we encounter tend to be magnified.
Yes.
Right? For example, someone will say that they have a really busy day. And relative to a parent with 10 kids, what's busy, right? And so I think that a lot of times what I've encountered is that we tend to discount the relativity aspect in a totality and more focus on it in a vacuum.
Yeah, I would say that I agree with that.
Right. Yeah. So where are we going with all this?
I think for me, and I know for many that I've spoken to, we get so used to having what we have on our plates and we tell ourselves, yeah, so if it's on our plate, we've got to do it to the max all the time. And there's never really an examination of, is this still working? Is this still aligned with my goals? How do I actually feel about it? Am I lit up about it or am I really kind of dreading it? And importantly, am I giving myself the permission to take a step back and maybe approach it differently? So that maybe I think we tend to get stuck in this black and white. Is it on my plate or is it off my plate? Do I have it to do or is it done? And I think there's a lot of gray there that we often miss.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of gray there. And also, I think even when we have the awareness that it's something that is not lighting us up, or we're not sure if it's on our plate or off our plate, we're hesitant to commit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to us more about that, the hesitancy to commit.
I think, a lot of times we ignore red flags. A lot of times we're the last person to know when we're not interested in something any longer. And it's clearly evident to everyone else. And if we took a step back, it is evident from our approach to things and what we're doing. And it's just that until someone almost gives us the permission to articulate what we've been thinking, we're almost sort of not willing to admit it, if that makes sense.
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like we could have taken this episode in a totally other direction too, which is like talking about creating, you've said this before, right? Are you giving others permission
Yeah.
to give you feedback?
Hmm.
There's a whole dance that goes there. And are you giving yourself permission? Are you approachable? How approachable are you by others to
Yeah.
have a safe space? Are you creating um, opportunities to have conversations where you can really examine outside of your own very myopic lens, right? Your own, what is this saying? You can't read the label from inside the jar,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
and that's the beauty of having people in your corner who are aligned, who have the same goals, or maybe have even differing perspectives, because oftentimes those are the most insightful ones.
Hmm.
As to,
Absolutely.
maybe I've been showing up in a way that isn't really truly accurate or helpful, or
Hmm.
insert whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that for today's episode, we have a message that we want to share
Yeah, we
with
do.
our audience. And I think it might make sense before we share the message to go back a couple of steps and explain our process and why we have a little bit of an announcement, a message.
Yeah.
So everyone knows we've got Shannon. She's an unbelievable part of this production, and Shannon does so much. I tell you, it's a lot. What she helps us identify guests, she helps us schedule the guests, she does all the logistics of getting the guest on. What we do is we hit the little red button, we record, and then we send Shannon a text that basically says, "Hey, we just recorded, guest XYZ," and then everything from the time the sound waves are in your eardrums is all handled by Shannon.
Hmm.
And I forgot the most important part. I didn't forget. I put it at the end. The most important part of what Shannon does is try to coordinate three extremely variable schedules. And as you can imagine, with a guest schedule, with varying time zones, with my schedule, with Seema's extremely busy schedule, that is the biggest challenge. And as a result, um, we have not had the ability to schedule a lot of guest episodes. And you can probably, if you listen back now, you'll hear some solo episodes. You'll hear a few more duo episodes than probably last 6 months. And so we've not had the opportunity to schedule as many guest episodes. And so our well runneth dry by way of episodes in the queue. And so that's a long way of saying that rather than compromise on quality or just for the sake of releasing an episode every week, what Seema and I have decided to do is take the summer as an opportunity to release episodes every other week. So on roughly, you'll get 2 episodes a month, but they will still be of the highest quality. They will still be well thought out, well produced. And between our travels and summer and things like that, we'll have the opportunity to fill that well back up and get ahead of recording so that we can be more thoughtful in what we bring to you guys starting in the fall. Seema, what did I miss?
You didn't miss anything except for the fact that you and I both, at different times leading up, knew ahead of time, like, we're, hey, you're going on trips, or maybe you're, managing just the various aspects of life that happens. And
Mhm.
creating that space to say, all right, here's where we're at. What are our options, right? So listeners, we didn't just come up with this in the blink of an eye. This conversation, this decision happened over the period of maybe a couple of weeks. It wasn't like it was a super long, drawn out, heavy decision. But the reason I'm giving you this piece is that so often, we realize not every single one of you is scheduling a podcast recording, but you are scheduling, how often you want to host friends over for dinner, or how often you want to work out, or maybe the cadence of your weekly team meetings. And, those things, if we don't give ourselves a space to examine and honor the season,
Mhm.
then we often, as Dinesh very, very astutely put it, quality compromises. There's a lack of intentionality, and it can leave people feeling like, all right, what are we actually doing here? We lack purpose, we lack clarity, we lack intention. and it feels like a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you give yourself the space to just recognize what else is concurrently going on, then you can better manage. Maybe I want to work out twice a week
Mm-hmm.
and not 4 times a week, just while I don't know, my parents are visiting from across the globe, right? Like there are ways to still integrate the different parts of your life without letting them completely fall off. And that starts with an honest conversation, either with your team or with yourself. And there is not a lot of room for judgment, but only discernment, right? Like there's no blame, there's no, self-hating that's happening. But I just want to encourage you guys to give yourselves permission to really look and honor the season so
Mm-hmm.
that you can show up with in a way that feels good to you.
Yeah, and I'm by no way an expert on burnout, but I think a lot of burnout comes from when you lose connection with what you're doing and why you're doing it and why it's important. And usually the step before burnout is when you are just going through the motions. And
Yeah.
like I said earlier, you usually are the last one to acknowledge or to know that you're going through the motions. And we didn't want the summer to be a time period where we're just going through the motions, because we said we would release an episode every week. And one of the options, just in pure transparency, we thought about taking a pause in the summer. We thought about re-releasing our top episodes in the summer. And then we thought about, continuing every week in the summer. And finally, after discussing it amongst ourselves, we said, you know what? I think the better thing to do is to do it at a 50% pace, but continue, because we have guests in the pipeline, and we didn't want those people to wait until September to come on. And that way we can be a little more intentional. We can be thoughtful about which guests we're bringing on, dedicate about 2 hours. It takes about 2 hours to record an entire episode. There's about 30-40 minutes where we chat with the guests beforehand. And then we go about an hour 15 minutes to make time for that, and continue doing it in a way that it really feels close and important to us, because at the end of the day, we get a lot out of this podcast, not only the conversations, but doing it in the way that we want to do it. Any final words before we let our listeners loose on our new schedule of the summer, Seema?
Guys, please remember to have fun and give yourself space, and don't lose the purpose in why you're doing what you're doing. We are so appreciative of every week you guys tuning in and listening. We get, Dinesh, I know you get this too, feedback every week from people who have said, how impactful these episodes are. And so we choose to keep showing up in our best capacity because we love you guys and we love hearing from you. And you guys are the reason we keep showing up. Aside from the fact I really truly love hanging out with Dinesh. You guys are why. You are our why. So have a happy summer, and we're still available on Instagram. DM us, reach out if you have things that you want to talk about. In terms of, you want ideas to float to us, let us know too. We can consider them as we craft the summer and fall.
Yeah, totally. I definitely agree with that. And at the risk of saying something totally inappropriate, I'm going to attempt to mansplain what Seema just said. She said, it's because of you guys she's willing to put up with me on this show. So have a great summer, everyone. We'll still be in your ears. Look for the episode every 2 weeks and stay in touch.